What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. Today I'm gonna be working on an LS motor. I got a 5.3 that I'm gonna be putting together. I'm gonna be showing you guys how to put it together, what I'm gonna reuse, what I'm gonna replace. Okay, so let's get started. I'm gonna start with the block. So this is a 5.3 liter that I sent to the machine shop to get rebuilt. I like to rebuild motors myself, but I don't have the machines to do it, so I'd rather play it safe and send it to the machine shop. In the past, I tried to put motors together, but I checked clearances and they were off. So I had to send them back to the machine shop, and it was just a waste of time. And to play it safe, I'd rather just have the machine shop put it together, check all the clearances, and have them make all the adjustments. And for the heads, same thing. I'd rather just have the machine shop do the heads. They have all the tools, all the equipment, all the machines, so they can do a faster and better job than myself. If I had the equipment and the machines, I would do it, but since I don't, and I'm not gonna be building motors every day, I'd rather not do it. So I'm gonna be replacing the lifters. I got new lifters. These are LS1 lifters. They're a little upgrade that everybody uses. And I'm also gonna replace the push rods. There's nothing wrong with using the original push rods, but some of the ones I had, they were a little bit worn out. So I'd rather replace the push rods with new ones. I'm gonna use the same head bolts. I'm gonna be replacing all the gaskets and seals. So for the rear main and the front seal, I'm gonna be using the original from the dealer. And for the rest of the gaskets, I'm gonna go with Velcro. I've always used Velcro in the past. I never had a problem with them, so I trust them. I'm gonna go with Velcro. One thing I want to mention though, these seals are made by National, and Velcro uses the same company, so these two seals are made by National as well. But regardless, I'm still gonna go with the original from the dealer, just to make sure I don't have any problems. And I'm gonna also use Permatex. I'm gonna be using the copper for the head gasket. I'm gonna be using the silicone, and I'm gonna be using the Loctite for some of the bolts. And I'm just gonna be cleaning some of the parts when I assemble them. So I'm gonna start off with the rear main. I'm gonna put the rear main on the block, and then I'm gonna put it on the engine stand. I'm gonna go ahead and install both of my seals. One thing you wanna check though is to make sure that the seal sits all the way to the back. On the LS engines, the seal sits all the way to the back, but on some motors, the seal, if you push it, it might go all the way through. And if you don't line it properly, it might touch the crank, and the crank might damage the seal. So on those engines, you gotta line the seal flush to the cover. But on this one, you could just push it all the way to the back and you'll be fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace both of the seals. One thing about the seal, every time I install the seal, I always install it dry. I never put grease or silicone around it. In reality, you don't need it. It's better when you put it dry. I also heard stories that when you put grease around it and you're driving the car, the seal comes out. So I'm gonna install it dry, but it's up to you guys if you wanna put some kind of silicone or some kind of grease on the outside of the rear main. This is how I remove the seals. So I'll grab a screwdriver and a hammer, and I'm just gonna tap it as close to the wood as possible. I'm gonna tap the seal out. Once I remove the seal, I'm gonna grab the new seal. Before you install it, make sure you install it properly. So on this side, and it's marked, it'll say this side out. You can see how it's marked right here. So this side, it's gonna go outside. So I'm gonna sit the cover flat on the table, and I'm gonna make sure I have it on the right side. Like I said before, there is a mark and there are letters saying that this side it's out. So I'm gonna grab a piece of wood, and I'm gonna tap it in with a hammer as well. And I'm just gonna leave it flush with the cover. So it looks like it went not all the way in, but that's how I'm gonna leave mine. And that's how I install the seals. I'm gonna go ahead and install the rear main. So I'm gonna make sure my surface, it's clean all around, and my crankshaft as well. I'm gonna be adding silicone on my gasket. So I like to put silicone on both sides. I noticed that the gasket lasts a lot longer when you add silicone. You don't have to, but I'm gonna do it on mine. I just finished installing the rear main. Now I'm gonna put the engine on the engine stand. I'm gonna be doing the same thing on the timing cover gasket. So I'm gonna apply silicone on both sides of the gasket. Then I'm gonna finish bolting it onto the block. Before I forget, every time I rebuild the motor or I have to open it to replace gaskets and seals, I always install a new Malin high volume, high pressure oil pump. It's just a little upgrade that it's gonna make the motor run better with oil pressure. I just finished installing my timing cover. So before you time the cover, make sure that it's gonna be flat with the block. So I'm gonna check on both sides that it's sitting flat, and I'm gonna finish tying it down, because sometimes it could be too high on this side or on this side and it might affect the oil pan. So just make sure that it's gonna be flat with the block and you should be fine. Now I'm gonna go ahead and install my oil pan. I'm gonna install the oil pan, but before I do, I'm gonna install the oil pickup tube with a new O-ring and the windage tray. I'm ready to install my oil pan. Before you install the gasket, you have to add silicone right here, right here, right here, and right here. I'm gonna be adding silicone all around the gasket on both sides, and then I'm gonna go ahead and install my oil pan. Once I'm done, I'm gonna turn the motor around and I'm gonna be installing my lifters and my heads. I just finished installing the oil pan, so I'm gonna go ahead and install the lifters. I'm not gonna reuse the old ones. There's nothing wrong with them, but I'm gonna go with the LS7 lifter. I heard a lot of great things about them. They're just an upgrade from the LS1, so I'm gonna be using the LS7. I'm not gonna soak them in oil. All I'm gonna do is just put oil on the outside so that when I install them, they're lubricated. I'm gonna prime the engine once I put it all together, so they should have plenty of oil before first startup. So I'm gonna go ahead and install the lifters, then I'm gonna put the cover, then I'm gonna install the heads. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and install the lifters. Like I said before, I'm just gonna put oil on the outside of the lifter, and I'm also gonna put oil on the block. I'm gonna be reusing the trays. There's nothing wrong with these ones. They're just discolored because of the oil and the heat, but this plastic is pretty stiff, so they're good trays. So I'm gonna go ahead, put oil, and install them. The lifters are in on both sides. I also put plenty of oil on the cam. I'm gonna go ahead and install the cover now. It has 2 grommets on top. So this is my gasket with the grommets. So I'm just gonna remove these ones. I'm gonna install these ones, and I'm gonna bolt on the cover. Got my cover on. I'm gonna be installing my crank pulley. I'm also gonna be installing the heads. I'm gonna go with Felpro head gaskets. I'm gonna be spraying copper on them. You don't have to on this one because it has a coat already, but I'm gonna give it a light coat of copper anyways. I already installed my pulley. Both of my gaskets are on. I spray them with copper. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and clean the surface of the head with just with parts cleaner, and I'm gonna go ahead and install them. I got both heads on the motor, so I'm gonna go ahead and torque it down. There is a sequence I got on demand, but if you don't have on demand, you can look it up online. So there is a sequence on how to do it. I'm not gonna show you guys how to do it because you can look it up, but these are my head bolts right here. Before I install my head bolts, I'm gonna add grease on the thread and also underneath the head. I like to add grease because when you torque them, there's no friction, so it's a little bit more accurate. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish bolting the heads down, and I'm gonna move on to the rockers. I got my heads torqued down. I'm gonna be using new push rods. I'm gonna be reusing the rockers. I'm just gonna inspect them and put oil, and I'm gonna be installing those in a minute. I'm also gonna install my valve covers. I got new gaskets for them. I just finished installing my push rods and my rockers. I put a lot of oil on both sides. So I'm gonna go ahead and install the valve covers now. And that's it. That's how I put my motors together. Now the most important thing, I gotta prime the oil pump. It's important to prime it because if you don't do it, you might damage the motor on startup. So I'm gonna give you guys the basics on how to prime your oil pump. I'm gonna start off with a filter. So I'm gonna fill it up with oil, then I'm gonna install it on the engine, and the rest of the oil, I'm gonna fill up the motor. I'm gonna at least put 3/4 of oil. If you're able to put all 5 or 6, then go ahead. But I'm just gonna put whatever's left after I fill up the oil filter. My filter is almost full of oil, so I'm gonna go ahead and install it on the engine. Now that I got my filter on, there is a plug on the front of the motor to the left. I'm gonna remove this plug and I'm gonna feed oil through here. But before I do that, I'm gonna pour at least 4 quarts of oil inside of the motor. So I'm gonna grab my oil and I'm gonna fill it up with at least 4 quarts of oil. Then I'm gonna go to this plug right here. I'm gonna remove it and I'm gonna feed oil through here. Okay, once I remove my plug and put the hose, I'm gonna fill it up with oil. On this one I already did, there's oil dripping already. So once I fill it up with oil, I'm gonna turn the crankshaft counterclockwise. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now. Okay, now I'm gonna turn my crankshaft clockwise and I should see oil coming out of the plug. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the crankshaft. And there it is, I can see oil coming out. So I'm pretty much done with priming the oil pump. I'm gonna go ahead and put the plug back on. Then I'm gonna turn it clockwise a couple of times. That way I get oil circulating inside of the engine. And that's it, that's how you prime the oil pump. And there it is, that's how I put an LS1 together. I just let the machine shop do the bottom end and the heads. And then I just put it all together. Make sure you guys prime the oil. It's really important that you prime the oil for the first startup. The headers and the intake, I'm not gonna leave them on. I just put them on just for pictures and for looks. The intake is an LS3 intake. It's not gonna bolt on to the LS1. If you guys have any questions on the torque specs, you could look it up online or you could ask me. I'm definitely willing to help you guys. But that's gonna be it for this video. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you guys next time.